Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another
What's up, guys?
Facebook live stream of This Would Know. I am Monty.
I am Daniel, and welcome today to the single-hosted episode of This Would Know. I am your only host for the day. Oh, did you not get the memo?
How did you do that, Daniel?
Did no one tell you?
What about me? Oh.
Yeah, so what you need to know is I have secretly gone behind Monty's back to our imaginary board of directors, and I have...
You got us a board of directors, too?
Oh, I have so many things, friend.
Well,
We're incorporated in several different countries. Surprise.
Ones? Any ones that have universal basic income, please?
I can't tell you. I'm not at liberty to say you are not privy to those conversations. Those are close hole only.
You, Daniel Kemper, are a tyrant. You're a tyrant. You learned the wrong lessons from Octavius Caesar.
I learned all of the right lessons from Octavius Caesar. Thank you very much. Brutus was an honorable man. Daniel Kemper is not. So, welcome everybody. I am your host, and joining me in my solo show as my guest for the evening is an actor, a writer, a director, a producer. He wears many, many, many hats. Oh, and I almost forgot. He's also the founder and the master of the revels for a little theater company you might have heard of called Rude Grooms that operates out of Queens. Please welcome, for the first time on This Would Know, my guest, Mr. Montgomery Sutton. Monty, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Daniel Kemper.
It's great. I know we've talked about doing this for so long, but
I feel so honored to be included on your show.
We were really trying to make this happen for a long time, but
I appreciate you jumping through all the hoops that my representation made you jump through to make this possible.
Oh, absolutely, man. It was my pleasure. This was it's a small little podcast that I started by myself with just an idea.
Wow.
But it's great to finally have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming.
It's so nice to be talking to a leader who does everything by themselves and needs no help or other people around them to make it successful.
I really do consider myself something of a self-starter. It's not much. It's just the little bit that I can do to make my own individual, singular, solitary impact on the world.
I look forward to what I learn from your abilities to do everything on your own today. I can't wait to see how I can take those own lessons for myself sometime in the future moving forward.
I appreciate you being open to the things that I have to teach you. I think I'm excited. I think this is going to be really productive and a real growth opportunity for the both of us.
Thank you, Jedi Master Daniel.
You are quite welcome. So I want to get into for background, Monty and I have actually known each other for about 15 years now. Yeah. I know. It's been a long time.
Can we not talk about that?
No, we're going to have to talk about it. Monty and I have known each other, or let me rephrase it a different way. Monty and I have known each other for almost 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
And, over the course of NYU and postgraduate life, coming back together to put these different shows together, and my part in Rude Grooms. It's been a real fascinating ride, and it's been a privilege for me to get to know who Monty is as an artist and as a worker, and also as a human being. If you've listened to previous episodes of the show, we have alluded to many a drunken conversation where we will sit out on Monty's porch in Queens and sort of figure out the meaning to life. And so I'm actually really excited, all jokes aside, I'm really excited for you all to get to know the side of Monty that I do, that is very thoughtful and caring and compassionate, and is just a hell of a hard worker. So,
are you sure you have the right guest for tonight's show?
I'm trying to be nice to you, damn it. Will you let me do my thing?
I guess it is your show. Fine. You can be nice to me if you want.
All right. So, Monty, we're just going to before we jump into the nitty gritty stuff, I want to just get some preliminary background information for people who are tuning in and maybe don't know you as well. So let's start off with the basics. Why are you the way you are?
Well,
like, why?
I do know that I was dropped in the bathroom as a baby.
Great.
I think it's because and Mom and Dad, if you're watching, you can tell me if I'm right or if I'd made this up. I feel like I peed in my dad's face and he didn't mean to, but it made him drop me. So I think, and again, maybe that didn't happen and I made it up, but either way, I think that's why I am the way I am.
So you basically came out at an early age with a blatant disregard for authority by literally peeing in your father's face is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
One of the things that I've actually been very curious about, having known you for as long as I have, is you always seem to be in motion. Every time that you and I have come into each other's lives, you are always working on this thing. You're always starting something else. You're running this over here. You're founding this over here. And so I'm actually really, really curious where in your background or your upbringing did that sense of, or that need to create sort of come from?
I mean, I think a huge amount of it, I think, comes from my parents, because they were, for a large part of my growing up, they would be in multiple jobs at once, or like running their own like one person consulting thing, and then their amount of work and effort and creation and time with volunteer organizations was so immense, and I think a huge factor. And so I think in a way I don't really kind of know any other way to be. I also I have realized, especially in light of COVID, that it's also because that's the best way I've found to deal with particularly my anxiety, is by feeling useful and having a responsibility towards other people, because I'll let myself down before I'll let someone down that I care about. And so I think a large part of the drive is also understanding that part of myself. In a way, it's self-care. When
you say that you don't know any other way to be because that was the example that was modeled for you, that makes a lot of sense to me. But where does that sense come from, where you would, it sounds like you thrive off of holding yourself accountable to other people, mm-hmm. rather than holding yourself accountable when it is just you. So what is it about other people being thrown into the mix of a creative process that really sort of galvanizes your sense of let's get it done-ness?
I mean, I think what I was trying to allude to in the last, this idea of, I have a proven track record of letting myself down on commitments, whether that's, health, projects, whatever. But the moment that someone else is involved and the delivery and quality of a thing is affecting someone other than me, that to me changes everything.
What about that? What about the addition of even one other person changes that for you?
I honestly don't know, man. As a writer, for example, plays that I want to write but don't have a theater that's specifically asking me to do it, or something on the line, a date set, and people on board with the project, I won't ever finish anything. I won't ever finish anything unless there is a delivery that involves other people. Even though, I know that a piece of writing could be good and helpful and illuminating, or just allowing other people to see a resonance that helps them feel less alone, whatever. Even though that work can have an impact on others, for whatever reason, it still doesn't. I still have a really hard time following through unless there is that, in this creative endeavor, here is a person that is intrinsically involved, and if it doesn't get done, you have failed them.
Can you pinpoint a time in your creative process where that shift sort of happened, or has it always been that way for you?
I don't remember a time when it wasn't that way. I don't think I became aware of kind of how to hack my own brain in that way, mm-hmm. until a few years ago. I just realized how my brain was naturally functioning and turned it to my own purposes.
And then, so you mentioned that what really drives you, what really gets you up and focused and working is holding yourself accountable to other people.
Yeah.
Now, there are a million different ways, because it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what's rooted in that is the desire to be of service to others. Is that accurate to say? Or is there a different way that you'd phrase it?
I think that's totally accurate. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So there are a million different ways that impulse could go. Why in you did that register as a career as an artist?
In a way, I think they're two separate things. I think there's that old thing that all the grizzled old actors tell you in master classes in drama school, right? Of if you can do anything else, go do it now, because you're going to eventually, at some point, it's going to beat you down. I think I make art because I don't really know another way to engage with the world than through that kind of reflective creation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that's separate from the service, actually, because obviously they're connected in the art that I make, but it's not, I don't think one is because of the other, if that makes sense. Maybe
Sure.
That's an unnecessary thing to draw.
The two are sort of separate in their own way. They're mutually exclusive.
Or not mutually exclusive, just it's not, there's not a causal relationship between them, I don't think.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And then how long have you known that creating art and artistic expression was the way that was your preferred medium to interact with the world?
I mean, since before I can remember, I know, like, I'm one of those folks that my parents and family will tell stories about all the wild vengeance that I was making people do when I was 3 and making them watch 3-hour plays that I was doing and making people climb into boxes to play Robin to my Batman and writing.
Were you making 3-hour plays as a 3-year-old?
I mean, I think maybe I was 4 from when I did my first 3-hour play.
Please tell me what a 4-year-old writes a 3-hour play about right now.
No, it was about Batman and Robin, and I was Batman, and my Uncle Robin was Robin, and I obviously I don't remember this, but apparently I made him climb into a box, and that was the play for 3 hours.
I'm going to go ahead and throw you under the bus to your family real quick. In your 3-hour Batman play, who was your Joker?
If any of my family is watching that knows the answer to that, please let me know. Because I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. I need to go get some hypnosis done, and then maybe I can rediscover.
Blaming your toddler self as the dodge for the question.
No, you know what? I do know. It was Joaquin Phoenix. He was 14. He was great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so it has sort of been an always there thing, but a lot of people that we know have had things that they have enjoyed doing, or things that that give them life or give them joy, and they don't decide that they're going to make a career out of it. When did you decide, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do for a living, this is how I will make my mark on the world? I
mean, probably like 7 or 8. There was a point at which I didn't know whether I would go to school to be a filmmaker or to be an actor. And then I saw a production of a brilliant play called The Drawer Boy at a theater in Dallas that in one evening proved to me that I had to be a stage actor. What about that production made that decision for you? It felt like going to church. Do you know what I mean? Like I had an overwhelming spiritual experience with that show that I don't think I had. The only other time I had felt that was I got very lucky and got to spend 3 summers in Japan in high school. And the first summer I was there, going through culture shock and all of that, I was incredibly depressed and locked myself in my host's house for a few days. And then finally, when I kind of came out of that, they took me to a temple, a Shinto shrine. And in this particular shrine, there was an underground, completely pitch black little path that's like the holiest part of the shrine. And as you walk down, when you get to the kind of apex of it and turn through, there's a little hole in the wall, and you reach through and you touch the first wooden beam that went into the ground for that shrine. Because at least the belief in this temple was that the god of that shrine, or the kami of that shrine, was the strongest concentration, or the
energy was the most present.
Yeah.
There.
And so that moment was the first, I would say, truly spiritual experience I ever had. And then the second probably was the drawer boy.
And so how old were you when you saw the drawer boy and had this experience?
This was senior year. I mean, like in college applications, it was like, I broke the rules and did 2 early decision applications. And one was for acting at NYU, and the other was for film at UCLA, and then got into NYU first.
Very cool.
Yeah, but before that had happened, no, that story might not be right. I think I chose not to finish the UCLA application because of this show.
Have you ever given any thought to what your life would have been like if it had gone the other way, if you had sort of like sliding doors your way through and gone to UCLA and done film instead?
I think about it a lot. I actually don't. I think it would have ended up being really similar, to be honest.
Interesting.
I mean, now I'm splitting my time between video production and theater making. So I'm doing both of those things as it is. I think I probably would be doing both of those things. It just would have gone the other way around. I got as many great things as were present at Atlantic. I think that my personal confidence and my personal growth in like realizing the actor that I wanted to be actually didn't begin with Atlantic. It began in the summer after our freshman year, when I got to play Ferdinand in Tempest for Shakespeare Dallas. Mm-hmm. And it was like the integration of that stuff with kind of my pre-existing things of like, I already know I don't like this about theater. I already know that I don't like this type of acting or this type of play or this type of actor. And Atlantic, of course, complicated all of that and gave me some tools. But then doing that show was really, I was like, okay, now I know the kind of artist I want to be. And now I can curate how, like, the training I want to get and how I want to get there. And so I think I would have probably, hopefully, that show would have happened anyway, because I was connected to it through a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful director named Renee Moreno, who passed away a few years ago. And he had been a major mentor of mine in high school and had done some training for me. So I imagine he would have put my name through for the callbacks for that one. Anyway, he wasn't directing the show, but he connected me to the director. And so so I actually think weirdly it's one of those life paths. And I think I would have always ended up in New York because I never wanted to live in California. So obviously it would be different in that if like this friendship was to form, it wouldn't have formed in college. And so that would be different. But I'm also like, so much of it would have been similar that I can't imagine that a lot of the people's paths who are the most important collaborators to me now, I wouldn't have crossed paths with at some point. So I think it would have been a different journey, but I think and maybe this is too idealistic, but I think it actually might have worked out to be similar to what we're in now.
Different journey, but the destination at the end of the day is all the same. That's interesting. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, and this is something that previous listeners, if you've ever listened to an episode of the show before, you've heard Monty talk about this subject. What I find really interesting is that during a time in college where a lot of us as young theater artists are sort of figuring out who we are and what our artistic voices are and really just how to be in the space, but it seems like you came to an advanced level of artistic practice with a lot of seemingly fully formed opinions already. And so when you say that you knew what kind of artist and actor you did not want to be and what kind of theater that you did not like, where do those opinions and impressions come from?
I was incredibly, incredibly lucky growing up. My parents, though not theater artists themselves, were on the boards for a lot of arts organizations growing up. And so they put me in my first acting class at 3 at a wonderful, wonderful place called the Dallas Children's Theater that was like my second home and definitely my second family, and spent 12 years in, classes 12 months out of the year there. My school also had a really, really strong drama program and got to do some really cool major roles there. And then Dallas also has an incredible organization called Junior Players that I've talked about on the pod a few times before that does all kinds of completely free young artist training from 6-year-olds in rec centers to the program that I got connected to in high school, where it's a 6-week kind of combined Shakespeare Conservatory and essentially high school cast professional production that's co-produced with Shakespeare Dallas on the stage the week after their summer season closes. So I just got an incredible amount of exposure to great artists and great roles. And, that I think the massive privilege of that, like, just meant that there was so much coming at me. And I had so much exposure that I didn't, by the time I realized what I liked and didn't like, I had so many different viewpoints, helping to guide me and inspire me, that I don't think it was, like regurgitating any particular point of view, if that makes sense. Like,
sure.
The amount of ingredients that had been thrown into the pot, I think allowed me to come to something that was truly my preferred type of performance, if that makes sense.
And so what are some of those ingredients in the world of Monty Sutton? What makes a good, or even, dare we say, a great actor? What makes a competent artist? The
qualities that make you the actor that you are, right? Like the qualities that make...
You're not getting out of the question by complimenting me.
No, I'm saying, I think it's very difficult for me to list like the qualities that is. I just know the people that it is, right? Like, and we are so lucky to work in this company where we get to work with purely artists that we love and respect the hell out of and are incredibly inspired by. And also to be able to be in the massively incredible and privileged position of putting together companies of artists that we love and being in those companies with them. So I think like it's just an easier answer for me to be like, look at the people that work with Rude Grooms, and that tells you the art that I love, because those are the artists that I respect the most.
And for the people who have not yet come to see or had the chance to see any of our work, what are some of the qualities of those actors?
Well, I would say then go to ShakespeareHappyHours.tv and you can see a lot of those people. Dude, I'm here to plug, man. I'm here to plug. I'm just like a battery charger. No, the qualities are playfulness, a focus on the other scene partner and the audience rather than on their own experience of a scene, emotional honesty and surprise rather than performativeness, committed messiness that's real, the nasty, the surprising, the spontaneous, the irreplicable. I don't like, this isn't fair, because those qualities can happen in a show that runs like clockwork, right? It's hard. We've talked, like, I think Harry Waller did a great job of talking about how you can find all of that in a tiny moment, right? If you're completely blocked, you can still find that in how you turn your head to the left every time, right? Like that. So I love the art most where it is apparent that it can't be replicated, right? So, watching any of Rylance's shows at the Globe or any of the new work that's happening under Michelle Terry, our friend Colin Hurley is like that type of, wow, you literally don't know what's going to happen on a given night. And you can feel that watching the show, and you know that you're a part of a singular moment of creation that is only possible because you're there, and it's only possible because it's happening in this moment. Even if the show runs for 3 years, it will never really be remotely similar. That is what I love the most.
So something that you just mentioned that I want to sort of get into, you said that one of the things that you value is emotional honesty, even if it's messy, versus performativeness. And I feel like there are a lot of – this is a conversation that happens in a lot of artistic circles. We all know people who sort of have their actor tricks, or the things that the bag of tricks that they can pull out of, the tried and true skills or techniques that they can do that always win over a crowd.
Yeah.
Everybody's got, if you think of some of the most commercially successful actors working now or who have worked before, everybody sort of has their thing. Can you explain in your own terms what the difference is, or how people can tell the difference between emotional honesty versus theatrical performativeness? How can you recognize the one from the other?
Well, so first I'll say I don't truthfully know that you can, right? Because it's entirely possible that someone's quote unquote honest response reads as fake to you, right? Like
So then that's fair. So then what does that mean to you?
To me, it kind of go back to that idea of, is it myopic? Is it self-focused, right? Is this an expression of an emotion that the actor feels like should happen? Or is it something happening while they are doing something? Does that mean, like, are you telling me that you're sad, or are you doing something? Are you playing a tactic and something comes up through you? Anya was saying in our first year, I remember her being like, she said this to me. I remember like the fourth week, she was like, "You're really good at faking what we're asking you to do." Like, I almost can't tell until like 3 minutes have gone in, and then I can tell. So stop that. But like, and I think there are people who learn that skill set, which is frankly at this, like, I don't know that I have the work ethic or the focus to be able to be that type of performer and to like calculate and curate a performance. Maybe that's the better way to say it, actually. I think a calculated, curated performance to me reeks of performativeness, whereas a performance that it's why I think messy is a really important word to me, actually, because it's like you ever heard the Toni Morrison quote about the job of rewrites is to make it sound like you're writing for the first time?
Oh, I didn't, but that's great.
I think it's so beautiful, and I think it so applies to acting as well. Like the job of rehearsing is to make it look like you've never done it before. And so maybe that's the difference of like, if I see that you are highly choreographed, that has that, I am an excellent artist who does my excellent thing excellently every time, that kind of quality to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So then my other question to that then is, how do you keep it from becoming stale or becoming rote? If you've been in rehearsal for 4 to 6 weeks and you are doing a 6-week run and you're on performance number 15, and you know the major beats of the play now. You know the major beats of the play. You know the rhythms that are going to happen with this particular company. How do you avoid the trap of making it feel stale?
Actually do the thing. Actually try and get something from this person. And if you're actually doing that, it will never be the same journey twice, so it can't be stale.
Explain what that means for people who may not be familiar with practical aesthetics.
So like the idea of, and I guess in many ways, practical aesthetics is one of the like post-Stanislavski inside out type approaches to acting. Of don't concern yourself at all with what something looks like, or what the quality of a thing comes off as, how something sounds, how something looks. Just read the text, discover the basic Stanislavski stuff, right? What is literally happening in the scene? What's your character want? It's the essential nature of that action, and then finding an as if for it. And I feel like that, an as if being like an imaginary circumstance from your own. An imaginary circumstance from your own personal life that connects you to that essential, the essential nature of that action. There's all kinds of ways of looking at it, but things that set up a way of playing rather than a way of delivering.
Following up on that, with this spirit that you've tried to infuse into Rude Grooms of keeping it messy and emphasizing an environment of play and discovery, when you're in a position where you have to act or manage a show and you know that, yes, we want to explore and yes, we want to play, but also we have to put up a production for people. How do you know, as a person in charge, when it is time to enforce some structure on the sense of play? How do you know when it's time to put rules in the playground?
If and when people ask for it. I think if actors ask you for something, it's because they need it and want it, and then that's helpful. Or when there's a clear struggle. If someone is having fun, playing boldly and bravely, coming through clearly, then I tend to not really want to get in the mechanics of that. If someone feels like they're a little bit restrained because they're maybe less confident in what the text might be in that scene or in the things that that character is asking for them versus what they usually play, if there's that kind of slightly held back feeling to it, I often find that's when a little bit of game, a little bit of structure is really helpful, because it can kind of relieve whatever the hiccup is. It can put the focus on something else, it can put the focus outside of yourself. Again, going back to Atlantic thoughts, getting that focus outside of yourself on something else allows for so much more freedom and play.
In the kind of artistic environments that you like to create, is there such a thing as too much freedom?
Oh, yeah.
How do you know when you've come up close to that line?
As a performer myself, or in like when I'm actually managing one of our shows?
Yes.
Great. I'll start with our shows because I think it's easier. When the drive of the show lags, like when that freight train is not, when it starts to get off the rails.
But how can you gauge that?
I mean, having had enough time and exposure to it to, without thinking about it, trust your gut, I think, honestly.
So you go more by feel as opposed to a particular set of metrics.
Yeah. I mean, it's art, right? It's not computer programming, which is an art itself. I'm not trying to say computer programming isn't an art, but like it's not a calculus equation. Mm-hmm. It's inherently subjective. And I think to try and make it objective gets away from the point and is unnecessarily challenging to me. As a performer, the audience tells me.
Do you find that to be a little intimidating, or like always in the back of your mind in rehearsal, because you're making these choices in the discovery, but you never know if these choices are correct until you get in front of an audience as a performer?
That's why I hate rehearsal, man. It's not that I don't like playing the scenes. I think that's super fun. I like just enough rehearsal to have the confidence and clarity with people to know, okay, great. What are we doing? What am I saying? What are we doing? Cool. And then after that, like there's only so much that I can personally learn really until there's an audience. Like obviously if it's a traditional environment and it's like we're doing a bunch of scene work and exploring this element of it, or like setting blocking and refining and all of that stuff, of course I'm down in game for all of that, but I don't, in those circumstances, I'm just 100% having to trust my gut and the director and whatever responses are coming from the creative team's table. And that, that response tends to stop after 3 or 4 days of hearing the same scenes over and over again. So it's really hard. And it's why I don't, to me, it's so different in acting in a rehearsal room or an audition room than it is with an audience. It just feels like I firmly believe, I think maybe a better way to answer that question about theater that I love, in fact, is an idea that is from a director named Mike Alfreds, who wrote a book called Different Every Night that Anya and I talked about on her episode, where he says he defines theater as, and this is my favorite definition of theater, when at least one audience member and at least one actor get together to create a shared imaginative reality. That is what theater is. And of course, theater can have much more on it, but that is the bones. And so I think when you don't have the half of that equation that is the audience creating your shared imaginative reality, it feels like a completely different thing to me.
What in your mind is the ideal amount of rehearsal time? How much rehearsal time is just enough to get it right, as opposed to doing it to death?
I mean, again, it depends on what the type of process is, right? Like our shows, our type of process of like freedom play, let's go. For me, it's a week as long as you're off book on day one. Mm-hmm. 48 hours of rehearsal in 1 week is enough to have that first preview still be real scared. And I think that's also really important, of like not getting set in choices until you have that other half of the audience there. That being said, theaters that work in that model are few and far between. And even those that do, it's usually a component of their season and not the whole season. So 90% of my professional contracts that's not how those institutions function, right? Like your job is to serve the director's vision of the playwright's intent. And your job is to show up and work under the constraints that that institution likes, that that director likes, that serve other. And so I think there's in more quote unquote traditional environments, I'm a big fan of 3 weeks. I think much more than that, and actors frankly are just lazy. Unless you're with a company that's really hard on it, I think actors just don't do their homework, and you spend a whole week of actors learning their lines in the rehearsal room. And I personally find it kind of insulting to the rest of the company. And I think, and that's, I learned that lesson big time in 2013 from an artist who I admire with every fiber of my being. His name is Ed Dixon. We were doing a show that was a 1 week rehearsal process, 1 week run, about Lee Harvey Oswald. And, his role was, probably 50% of the text in this show. Massive amount of text, dense, giant speeches. He was the detective interrogating Oswald. And they had, the director had asked us to be off book, but we weren't required to, because there is, and I totally respect this and think that this should be included. Equity, if you're asked to, on a professional contract production, to come in off book, you're required to be paid a week's wages to do that. And I think that is a wonderful union policy. And I understand the additional financial burden that could place on institutions, until you think about the fact that I think if you do that, you can cut out 2 weeks of rehearsal. Mm-hmm. If you come in that prepared. And that's what Ed taught me on that day. So we came, we had been asked to, but not required to. And I was, I had maybe a grand total of 85 seconds of text. I kind of memorized them, but not really. I was like, well, I'll glance at them or whatever. I kind of know where they are and where they come in, but I didn't know my cues at all, any of that stuff. Ed walks in, we have our meet and greet, our sit around, and the director, Casey, was like, all right, let's start the read through. Ed had his script out on his table, open, while we're talking. He starts the play. She says, let's start the read through. He closes his script and goes. And it was that moment.
That's a big flex.
Right? And I'm like,
it's a real big flex.
It's one of those moments. You remember when Bammet gave his guest class and he was like, there are two types of samurai. There's one type of samurai who comes in and writes poems about the cherry blossoms. And there's another samurai who comes in, cuts that other samurai's head off. Which samurai do you want to be?
I don't remember this at all.
It's the only thing I remember from that masterclass, to be honest. I was like, this is completely useless and very Mammoth. All due respect. But also it's that is one of my favorite. I just think that's the funniest thing in the world. But conversely, I will say that has kind of, I now actually weirdly, that is frequently coming up in me, and that idea of what type of actor do you want to be? And every time I work with an actor that I am inspired by or does something like that, and I'm like, I owe it to myself and the people that I am in a rehearsal process with to be that type of actor, not the type of actor that I currently am.
Sure.
And that was one of those. So, sorry, roundabout way of saying that show had 1 week rehearsal because Ed was so incredible and so immaculately prepared. That week was more than long enough in that process. So I think it really depends on all of that stuff. 3 weeks in a more traditional environment is kind of my sweet spot of, if we're going to be blocking for a while and then doing scene work for a while and then going into tech for a week. 3 weeks is enough to still make me not feel stuck, but to be able to execute within more extreme structure.
Do you find that it is easier or more difficult now with the structure that you've implemented in Rude Grooms to find artistic satisfaction in traditional rehearsal environments? And coming from the kind of structure that you've built, when you go into more traditional artistic environments and more traditional rehearsal rooms, how do you go about finding that kind of artistic satisfaction when there isn't the same sense of freewheeling play and discovery?
It's funny because since we started Rude Groom, I mean, I had been very lucky to work in this way with a company called Passion and Practice. It was probably the first time I was really exposed to this type of work. And then with, some of the workshops we've done here in New York with, New York Shakespeare Company under David Baines. So honestly, I can't really talk about Rude Grooms because since we've started Rude Grooms, I've only done Is that right? I think I've only done one contract in a quote unquote traditional environment, but it was a 6-week rehearsal process, but I felt completely free to work in the way that I work. Like there was not, it did not pose a problem at all. It was like, it actually like bizarrely, and because of the cast that we had, like it was probably the most fun I've ever had in a long rehearsal process, just because it was so full of play, and finding new stuff. And it was a big enough cast and creative team that thing I was talking about of missing the audience wasn't quite there. Like there was enough people in the room that it was kind of just like having a little black box version of the play every night in a way. So no, that one was not, I think that was only enhanced by, the growth and things that we're discovering in the way that we're working. Before we came together as Rude Grooms, but I had been exposed to that and realized how much I loved that way of working. I had a few shows, and no, I think honestly it enhanced all of like it, and kind of with that Ed idea too. Like it just meant that I was more prepared and knew what I wanted to get out of the process. Whereas before that, I would just come in on day one and try and figure out what I wanted from there, rather than being like, nope, this is how I like to investigate. This is how I like to explore. This is how I like to play. So being more prepared in a traditional environment makes it easier for you to more freely discover, even within the confines of that structure. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And the only exception to that, but again, like I do think that this goes like when there was really, 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 really strict kind of manipulative puppeteering structure, that was super frustrating, but that's always frustrating. And I think it was in a way less frustrating because I knew how to try and find whatever, even if no one else saw the play that I and the scene partner would be having, I'd know how to try and find that with them, even if it was, subversive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
And then something that you mentioned earlier that I wrote down, and I wanted to make sure that we came back to it. You mentioned in one of your preferences for a shorter rehearsal process, you mentioned that it was important to you that the company on the opening night of previews is still a little scared.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about why that is important.
One of the things that Anya was talking about in terms of flow state, right? The amount of, you need a certain amount of challenge and a certain amount of confidence and skill level. And if those things meet at the right point, you get into flow state. Mm-hmm. If it's not challenging enough, or if it's too challenging, or if you're not prepped enough, or don't have the skill set yet to actually execute the thing, you can't get there. So I think when I'm talking about fear, it's about that flow state idea. That if it's not challenging enough, then in a way there's only so much growth and blossoming that you can have. If I don't have that little bit of like, I really might completely like, mm-hmm. I could completely crash and burn this thing tonight. That's the kind of jet fuel that usually makes my creativity go to the next level, at least in terms of my enjoyment and the stuff that I experience in those processes.
So then you like to be a little afraid that you could mess it all up. I know so many people, or you talk to so many people who hear that, and it would just immediately and instinctively put them in their head because they just want to make sure they don't want to mess it up. They don't want to let anybody else down.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear how that balances with your sense as an artist, where you hold yourself accountable so that you don't let other people down. So if there's this sense going into previews, there's like a little bit of fear that you might mess it all up right now.
Yeah.
How do you square that with the obligations that you place on yourself for making sure that the rest of the company is served by your being there? And then how do you keep from going over and over in on yourself in your head to like double and triple check to make sure that you have everything locked down and that you don't mess anything up? How do you keep from just like folding in on yourself?
Well, to answer the first part of that first, I think that is the dichotomy that I'm talking about. It wouldn't function if it wasn't about I have to succeed. Like I have to I have to not just get through this and hit my marks. I have to help the other people across from me have an authentic response. And I find that I'm able to be much more generous and playful and generative and give other people more to work with that's honest and surprising to me, and hopefully will be to them when I'm at that strange threshold. So I feel it is in fact that pressure that makes that entire concept work for me. Most people who've done a bunch of shows have seen those actors who are just like, yeah, I just come in and I just do a bunch of vengeance! I'm just going to do this. Vengeance! That I'm going to do, and it's going to happen, and there's no tether, there's no, they don't have the other side of that. They're just chaos. They don't have the desire. It's not the beautiful tension between chaos and clarity and focus. It's just the chaos. Like, just as much as I don't like when you have just the clarity and focus and you're presenting a pre-prepared thing, just the chaos is equally. And in fact, you know what? No, just the chaos I think is even worse. Just the chaos is dangerous for other actors. Just the chaos, there's no chance you're going to tell the story well. You'll probably win a Tony Award. But like, there's no way you're going to tell the story well. Like, you have to have that tension, I think. So I think that's and that's like, how do you not let people down? By being the most prepared artist in the room. Come in knowing your lines better than everyone else, being more word perfect, having clearer, deeper, more specific actions or intentions or objectives, whatever phrase you want to use. Know your cues better than anyone else does. Enter every scene to ignite the play up.
I think to synthesize what you were saying, I think the big takeaway, at least the thing that resonated most with me, is like, you avoid that trap and you avoid that endless cycle of self-doubt and potential internal paralysis by always making sure that you are prepared, making sure that you are the most prepared that you can be. Because even if you get to a point where maybe there's a flash of internal panic, you have the muscle memory, you have the internalization of everything that's supposed to happen. So even your autopilot, your sense of autopilot is prepared and is ready to go there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think that's very, very well stated. Thank you for speaking better than me.
Great. So we are going to get ready to wrap this up soon. So for those of you,
get that guy off of Daniel's show. Why did you have him as a guest?
I'm going to take a couple of minutes of questions. If you have anything that you would like to ask Monty, whether it's professional, personal, artistic, or otherwise, put them in the chat now. And I will start filtering those as best as I can. I'm going to start with a question that was presented earlier from Amber Elby, saying that this is from Monty, saying, if you could star in or write any TV series, past or present, which would you choose? And would you do a reimagining or somehow star in the original?
I'd want to be on Star Trek TNG, and no, I would not want to reimagine it. And I want to, I'd want to be one of those folks that got to write and direct for it too.
Would you want to star in it or just be in the writer's room?
No, star in it. Yeah, I want to be.
Who would you want to be? Because if it's not a reimagining, that means that you're playing an existing character. So who would you be?
Wait, can I just be a new character?
Nope.
They write a character
because that would be a reimagining. This is the original. So whose spot are you taking?
It's a hard question, right? Because it's like the roles I would want to play. I wouldn't want to do it without that human in that role.
Blame me. It's Amber. She asked the question.
Amber, I blame you. Stop asking us such good, challenging questions. I've learned from my past mistakes, and I'm pausing to reflect rather than just mouth diarrheaing at you in response.
See, and there's growth, people. That's what the show's all about.
Right. As I said, I want to be more like this actor than this actor. Thank you for modeling that. Which
I am going to put you on the time limit, though, because we are approaching an hour. Yeah. Don't think about it. Just go. Which one?
You have to kill your darlings, so Riker.
Okay. So Star Trek TNG, Montgomery Sutton starring as Riker.
So sorry,
Also,
Jonathan Frakes. I'm so sorry. I don't want to kill you. Daniel made me do it.
Yep, it's my fault. I regret nothing. Also, follow up from Amber LB. Her 11-year-old daughter, I don't know if it's okay to say her name on stream, so I'm just going to refrain. Her 11-year-old daughter has a question that is probably the most important question you will answer of the evening, so choose your words carefully.
Okay.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Okay. And there we go.
Have you met me or seen my energy? Like, am I more like a cat or a dog? I'm going to say dogs. I love cats, but like, I got to pick one. I'm picking a dog.
Okay. And there we go.
But I love cats. It's not because I don't like cats. It's just like, like Jonathan Frakes. I love Jonathan Frakes and cats.
Nope.
But I'm going to choose Riker and dogs.
Nope. That's it. Nope. No follow-up questions. Okay. That is going to be... Oh, I can. Okay. So I'm allowed to say it. So thank you, Alex, for the answer to... Thank you, Alex, for the question.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Host Daniel. Don't you also need to do recommendations?
That's what we're getting to, which is why I'm trying to wrap up the show. But before we get into recommendations, Monty, thank you so much for joining me on my show, This Would Know. Please let people know on the internet where they can find you.
Well, they can find me at Montgomery Sutto on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at Montgomery Sutton, and they can visit my website, montgomerysutton.com.
Thank you so much to my incredible guest, Montgomery Sutton. My name is Daniel Kemper. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at The Daniel Kemper, and also on my website, danielkemperacts.com. Tune into another episode of This Would Know live on Facebook next Saturday at 7 p.m., where I will very graciously give Monty back the reins of this show.
What?
And the guest star next week joining us for a conversation will be moi.
What?
Yes.
How did I get him?
Yep. I worked it out. I called in a couple of favors.
Dude, thank you so much. Like, I never thought that I would get to interview Daniel Kemper.
It's what I do, man.
I thought it was too big of a stretch. Dude, you're the best.
This is why you brought me on as company manager. This is what I do.
Yep. You're an excellent casting director, Daniel Kemper.
We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, but we're not actually saying bye.
No, we're not actually saying. That was just a sign off. Okay, recommendations. What do you got this week?
I am recommending Chukwudi Iwuji, who is one of our very, very, very greatest Shakespeare actors anywhere, who we are very lucky to have based in New York right now. But I first saw him like way back, like when we were in school in playing Henry VI at the RSC. He has started up an awesome thing called Bounded in a Nutshell, and he's getting industry guests every week, and it's kind of a combined thing of him interviewing them and then having some days of workshops with them. So like this week, or this upcoming week, I think it's Heidi Griffiths and Kristen Linklater, and it's just awesome, super cool. You can, if you go to his Instagram page, which is CHUKWUDI_IWUJI on Instagram. There's a Google form right there. That's his link in bio, and you just sign up on that. And he's posting stuff as they're coming up. And I didn't do the one last week. I'm hopefully going to sign up to do it this week. We've just been so crazy with the happy hours, but it is amazing. My dear friend Michelle turned me on to it, and Chuck's incredible. So if you want to use this time, if you are looking for something to do now that we've been in quarantine for a bit, I think you should check out Bounded in a Nutshell with Chukwudi Iwuji.
Awesome. This week, I am going to recommend, if you do not have it already, you should very seriously consider getting a subscription to Hulu so that you can watch Mrs. America, their new show that just started streaming this week, starring Cate Blanchett, Rose Byrne, Uzo Aduba, and just an incredibly talented cast. It is about the attempt to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment into the U.S. Constitution and the women's liberation movement of the 70s and 80s. And it stars Cate Blanchett as Phyllis Schlafly, the major conservative opponent of the ERA. They've already released the first 3 episodes at the time of this recording, and it is phenomenal. The stagecraft and production is excellent, and Kate Blanchett is a force of nature amidst an incredibly talented cast as well. So I cannot recommend it highly enough. That is Mrs. America, MRS America, on Hulu.
Cool.
Yes. Also, just before we sign off, your mom says, amazing questions. Can't wait till next Saturday. Blocking my very busy calendar. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
All right, guys. We are going to move over to the Patreon only room. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you already know everything you need to do to get over there. We're just going to talk all kinds of shenaniganery in the post show. I'm going to get a scotch.
Ooh.
And, oh, yes. And then if you are not a Patreon subscriber and you, for whatever reason, are not going to become one tonight so you can join us in the post-show room, we will see you right here next Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Do not be late, because if you do, I will judge you.
And we'll see you before that on Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Is it Daylight Time? EDT, whatever. I'm really bad with all this stuff.
EST. It's just EST.
No, it's
Eastern
not.
Standard.
I looked it up. I was corrected by Virginia Parish, and then I looked it up, and it's not EST. It's EST until the time changes, and it's EDT right now.
I'm saying EST.
Google it.
I don't believe in the Google. I'm saying EST.
Well, anyway, whatever Eastern time you prefer, 5 o'clock that time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Shakespeare Happy Hours are back, shakespearehappyhours.tv, or you can search for it on YouTube and subscribe to that channel to get notifications when they're going live.
All right, guys, we will see you for the post show. And then if not, you got 4 other chances to see us this coming week.
That's right.
So, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of This Wooden O, hosted and produced by Daniel Kemper and Montgomery Sutton. Original music is by Cara Arena. This Wooden O is brought to you by Rude Grooms, a Queens, New York-based theater company creating epically intimate theatrical experiences in public spaces, non-traditional venues, and new media. Learn more at rudegrooms.com or follow us on social media at Rude Grooms and at This Wooden O.